When it comes to self-development, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. If you're ready to transform your life and claim the potential inside of you, then you're in the right place. Welcome back to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schechter. As an integration specialist and breathwork facilitator, I'm invested in making the dynamic landscape of personal evolution accessible. My goal is to inspire you to take action for yourself, because you have the capacity to evolve and bring your intentions and dreams into the world. And there's never been more access to so many incredible modalities that can help you on your journey. This podcast will help you learn simple methods you can use to transform your life and share the stories of practitioners who are doing the work so that you feel inspired to go and practice, because that's the vital point. My guest today is an amazing human being, my friend, Cameron Leids, host of the Trip Sitting blog, Trip Sitting podcast, and various other amazing journalistic efforts, here and there. I'm sure he could elaborate on that more. But between the two of us and our podcast, this is our fourth podcast together. I've been grateful and blessed to be on Cam's podcast a couple of times, including the last time we did it together, mid sort of come down from an amazing MDMA experience. And I have to say that kind of inspired today's episode, because I'd really like to hear from Cam about his recent trip to Costa Rica, where he sat with ayahuasca. And that sort of sparked this idea. And I'm just going to be really transparent with you, the listener, that we're out on the edge right now. This is an experiment. At the very least, it's going to be a really awesome conversation amongst two friends and two people that are interested in integration and, some of the deeper things in life and not taking ourselves too seriously. I think we could agree on that. But my idea that I hit Cam up with was, what would it be like to sort of do an integration session, and kind of go a little bit deeper into his integration process, and where that could intersect with my work as an integration coach and somatic experiencing practitioner. And as we've gotten closer to the sort of the recording date, I've had some doubts and some questions come up about oh, is this really a good idea? Is this going to work out? You can't sort of force this process. It's really more organic. And rather than shy away from it, we both kind of collectively said, fuck it. Let's just roll the dice and see what happens. So first of all, Cam, welcome back to the show. And secondly, thank you for being willing to just take a chance and do something experimental with me.
It is my pleasure. And given the fact that you took a chance and did my experimental thing of, recording it while we were coming down on MDMA, I figured it's, obviously only right to return the favor, and something that I think that I can get a lot out of too. Because a lot of my integration so far, it has been kind of me trying to figure this out. I haven't been consistently working with one person. So I think that this could be helpful.
I'm totally on the same page. I was oh, I feel like your show, and I feel inspired when I'm around you, and inspired to be more authentic, to take some risks, even if it's not oh my God, this is going to get 1 million likes, or be that thing that turns me viral or something like that. But just to be authentic and just try things, and certainly listening to your podcast where, you recorded while you were still, in the middle of the mushroom journey, kind of inspired me. And then, our podcast together, where we were both, at the tail end of this amazing MDMA experience, inspired me more. And so, I can't think of a better person to have this experience and experiment with than you, my brother.
Well, I am honored, truly.
Yeah.
and nervous.
Right. Yeah, that makes two of us for sure. So yeah, for everyone listening and just even for the two of us, we'll just kind of take it slow and see where it goes, and maybe this is a good way to just to drop in and take away a little bit of the nerves and to help everyone. See, I love that. Like right there, like I hope you can hear that. And I'm definitely going to like leave it in because we didn't even do anything, but immediately like the breath just changed. And that's what I'm talking about. So yeah, if you're in a place where you're not going to be in danger for doing this, I'm just going to invite you to kind of drop in with us a little bit. The way that we like to start these sessions as far as the SE is with a practice called orienting. And orienting is just as simple as starting to let your eyes kind of go where they'd like to go. I usually just invite people to let their eyes wander and just kind of explore. And as you're exploring your space visually, just start to bring the other senses into your experience. Like, what are the sounds that you're hearing? What sensations are alive, especially on the skin? Like if you can feel air or notice your clothes. We're just taking a moment just to slow down and really start to drop into the body and what is alive here in the experience. Yeah. So what do you notice doing that?
I definitely notice, I think in my body, some tension as I start to look around. The air feels hot, and that's because I don't have central air conditioning in my house. And I don't know, my eyes almost don't like to wander and continually move. Like they kind of wanted to just stop and like just stay in one place without actually focusing on anything. So I think it's kind of interesting, like me actually truly like consciously orienting my space and taking notes of, oh, that's there, that's there, that's there. This is where I'm at in the space. This is where everything else is at. Versus like, I already know all of these things are right exactly where they are because I'm in this space every single day. But,
right.
I don't think I ever really consciously take the time to notice that.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like sometimes it's like, oh wait, that thing is there.
Or sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I need to move that. That shouldn't be there, and that's been there for a month now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely have that as well. So I just want to check in with like the tension. Is that still kind of there or?
Definitely in my neck. I woke up with a knot in my neck today. Okay. More than that, it feels like a little bit of tension kind of like in my gut.
Yeah. So, and again, it's not that that's bad or wrong or that we have to move away from it if it feels okay to kind of explore it or hang out with it. But, since we're doing a little bit of a experiment and kind of taking people along for this little ride, I wonder if there's something that could be resourceful for you, like something that would be the counterpoint to that tension. So if there's anything that like you notice in your body that feels comfortable or relaxing, easeful, resourceful. Definitely your breath. Like I'm just noticing like
yeah,
your
breath,
breathing.
my breath for sure.
Yeah. And like other things that we, tend to like sort of encourage or, just invite are like noticing how we're taking up space,
Hmm.
like noticing where the body feels supported by, the chair that you're sitting in or just the surface. Sometimes it could be like the sensation of the feet on the floor.
Yeah. I like to, I don't know if this is included in that or along the same thing, but I like to fidget. Like I like to have
Hmm.
something in my hand that I can just kind of like, I don't know, play around with, feel. Like to me it's like it's grounding to have like that, just like a thing, which is I just have like this little coin um that I have on my desk that I keep with me.
Nice. Yeah. So what's that like? Just when you're holding it and kind of in contact with that.
I don't know. It's just it's comfortable. Like I don't know if maybe I'm trying to not feel something, so like I need to give myself
Mm.
something to do in order to not feel it.
Yeah.
Or if like I don't know, I think I like I just feel like I need to be in some sort of motion. Um unless I'm like very consciously not being in motion, but like otherwise, like I definitely like swing back and forth in my chair like I'm doing right now. I definitely notice the fact that I do that um pretty often.
Nice. So what's um what's it feel like being Cam right now?
What does it feel like being Cam? It's a little stressful. Um it's also a lot of fun.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of duality, and I think I'm like aware of the duality and don't always know what to do about it.
Hmm.
Which I think is where like a lot of the stress and anxiety can stem from. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, it's I'd say it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What's like what how's it been since your ceremonies? Maybe we could just like drop into like how that came about, because I remember when you were sharing it with me, that sounded really like what's the word I want to use? Like fortuitous, or like, just the universe working out.
Synchronistic.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
Um, it was. So I was in Costa Rica with my partner. We were there for 12 days, and I was mainly there to just check out the some of the different centers that I work with down there, meet some of the people, and just have fun in Costa Rica. Um, so little business, little pleasure, and pretty much once I got there, and I think I had been feeling the call to sit with ayahuasca again for, I mean, at least a few months, where I was seriously thinking about it, and I didn't have plans to sit with ayahuasca when I was there. And then once I got there, like that calling was definitely just nagging at me a lot, hearing all of the people around me talk about it and talk about ceremonies and just things like that. And it made me miss it a lot. And so I think it was, I don't know, probably the fourth or fifth night that we were there. And I had said something to my partner, just being like, hey, I really am feeling like the call and the need to sit with ayahuasca again. I think I've been feeling it for a while, and I've been trying to deny it because it's hard for me to make the time to do that and take a week away and all that stuff. Because I remember the preparation that I'd done for my last retreat, and it was pretty intense. Um, and there were definitely just some tension and some tears that night, but we had you know talked and came to the kind of agreement like, hey, we were going to both work on how do we make that a priority to make sure that I get to have that experience soon. And then we woke up the next morning, and the guy that we were staying with, uh, just mentioned to us, he's like, "Oh, hey, my group that I sit with, we've got 2 extra spots in a couple of nights. If you guys want it, let me know."
Wow.
And it was like, oh, well, that was way easier than I thought it would be. And initially I was not immediately like, yes, absolutely. Like I I talked with my partner because she had never done it before. And, it was kind of like, we don't have to, I don't want to take time away from our time here and, blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, no, like we just had this discussion last night. Like you're fucking doing this and I want to do it with you in a very loving way. But she's like, you're doing this and it's something that I want to do as well. Just because I didn't want to push her into it. So I wanted to make sure that she wasn't just doing it for me, that she wanted to do it for her too. And, it sounded like she did. So yeah, we made it happen. And then 3 days later we were sitting in ceremony.
Yeah, that's, I mean, like, it's super cool. Like, and I definitely understand that consideration. Cause like, yeah, we both know, like, it's not like a casual thing. Like, oh yeah, we're just going to go sit in an ayahuasca ceremony. And at the same time, like, I wonder, what was that like to feel that support from your partner, of her like, yeah, like, no, we're here, we're doing this.
I mean, that's indescribable. Like that truly like meant the world to me. At that moment, just knowing that I had that support from her. So I'm, eternally grateful that, that she was there to make sure that I went through with it and didn't doubt that, why I was there and that this was happening, and like essentially allowed the universe like to work to put this thing in front of me, and then, me not turn the other way and, making sure that I actually took advantage of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're talking about that and kind of remembering that moment, that conversation, like, going back and saying, okay, like, we just had this talk. What now? Like, what do you notice?
I get like goosebumps, chills, and there's a huge smile on my face.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm watching,
yeah.
I'm like watching you, like, just that I can feel it coming through the screen.
Mm-hmm. It's like one of those things, like when you just know that the universe just gave you this gift, and like, that's so special to be able to like sit in that knowing and just kind of, and just be grateful and like say thank you, knowing that I was about to have this experience that I had been really wanting to have for a while. And yeah, I definitely wrote at the time though, I was definitely nervous too. I had no clue what was going to come up.
Right. Well, I just want to, if it's okay, just to hang out with this for a little bit before we like move on to the actual experience. But like, if you, like, as we're talking about it, as you're thinking about this, this amazing sort of joy and just incredible experience, talking with your partner. Yeah. Just, if you had to find that feeling in your body, where are you finding it?
Not to sound cliche, but in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can feel my heart beating.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's juicy. Is it okay to just hang out with it? So really just start to like notice not only the sensation, but like noticing how big it is. Like, is it like a ping pong ball, a basketball? Like, can you notice like where that feeling sort of starts and ends?
Let's call it a tennis ball.
Okay. Yeah.
I also feel some tingling that's going like down my legs into my feet and toes.
Nice. Which one feels like stronger to you in this moment? Like the tennis ball in the heart or the tingling in the legs?
The heart.
Okay. Yeah. So if it's okay, we'll just hang out with that. So just noticing sort of that, the boundary of it, like that tennis ball size feeling in the heart. And then just bringing your breath right into it. Yeah. There you go. Hmm. Yeah. You still with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just let me know, if anything pops up, any images or more sensations, more feelings. Just what do you notice like when you kind of slow down and pay attention to that feeling
Gratitude
in the chest?
is like overwhelming.
Nice. Yeah. From the chest or somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is it cool to just hang out with that gratitude?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So yeah, just using that breath, just really letting yourself receive and tap into that feeling. Yeah. I have no idea if this is making for a good podcast, but at least we like got over the initial hump of whether this was going to work. Yeah, that's super cool. I really appreciate you just being willing to like be open and be vulnerable here, with me and with the listeners. What's that like?
It's nice.
Mm,
It's a nice sensation.
yeah.
I think sometimes I have trouble being able to drop into to that just by myself, knowing that there are a million other things that I need to get done. I think I have this feeling that like, because I have all these things, like I don't deserve to just sit and be happy and just sit with gratitude. Like
Mm,
what a waste of time that is.
okay. Would you be willing to try something?
Yeah.
So if you're still kind of feeling that sensation in the heart, just kind of tap back into it. And then I'm just going to invite you to put your hand or your hands on the heart itself. And then what would it be like to just say to yourself, I deserve to rest. I deserve to feel this gratitude.
I think there's a part of me that's feels a little bit uncomfortable doing that and saying that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's some sort of pushback.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Just in general, or because we're recording a podcast?
Let's call it a little bit of both.
Yeah. But see, isn't that interesting? And like, so I think if you and I were doing more work together, that would be some more like material to explore.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can sit here, especially like as two sort of psychedelic podcasters, and really like, I think you would agree, correct me if I'm wrong, that like, yeah, you deserve that. You deserve to be embodied. You deserve to live the life that you truly want, like your wildest dreams.
Yeah.
And yet, in the midst of all that, in the midst of this like amazing, powerful, transformational experience that you just had, there's still like that little bit of resistance, that like that human programming that's like, oh no, I got to get back to work.
Yeah. Like, okay, but what are you actually going to do?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's where my mind goes as far as like having this sort of integration, hat on right now. But I really just appreciate the fact that you're like being willing to be vulnerable and to share that, right? Because you didn't have to say that. You could have been like, oh, everything's great, just gratitude and bliss and yay,
Yeah, I mean, I'm truly, truly happy that you asked me to do this, because like this is the shit that like I love to explore, and that like I want to be modeled for other people, to really show that it is okay to be vulnerable and like be human, and show these parts of ourselves that we don't, maybe we don't love, that we probably half the time don't even want to admit that they're there. We build up this image of ourselves in our head, and then try everything we can to like, live up to that image that we built in ourselves. But that's impossible, because we are ever changing beings. Like, we're not just one thing other than ourselves. That's the one thing we always are. It's interesting, if you don't mind, like for me to share something, but I recorded a podcast this morning with the founder of the first retreat center that I went to when I was in Peru. And to prepare for that this morning, I grabbed my journal that I took with me to Peru and wrote in while I was at that retreat center, and was just reading through my entries, which I hadn't done in a very long time. And it was just interesting, like some of the things that I wrote and some of the lessons that I had learned then, me realizing now over a year and a half later that, I think I've just forgotten some of the things that I wrote, and I was like, damn, that's really good advice. I should do that more. And one of them specifically just had to do with, I try to hold myself to this standard of perfection that doesn't actually exist. Like it's not a real thing. It's based on my expectation of what I think I should be, based on my parents' conditioning and society's conditioning and all these different things. But like, I just need to like forgive myself, like for not being perfect, and just give myself just more grace. And I think I've gotten away from realizing that and being really conscious about it. Cause I remember when I came back after my first ayahuasca experience, like I was really conscious about that right there. Self-forgiveness, grace, self-love, and like making that a top priority to make sure I really felt that. And, it feels like now where I'm at in my life, like a lot of that's gone by the wayside. Like, it's stuff that I can consciously be like, oh yeah, self-love, forgiveness, grace, all that. But like, am I really doing it every single day? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, that programming is so like it's so locked in, and at least for me, like there was so there's so long, and there still is. It's like an ongoing process of like sort of turning this like, here's this part of me I don't like, and I want to change it, and I have to figure out how to like overcome it or like kill the ego, like all these like really like strong, sort of words, right? And really, I feel like at my best is figuring out how to love those parts,
Yeah. I was,
and getting like sometimes getting like really curious with those parts of like, well, what are you afraid is going to happen if I'm not busy or if
mhm.
I'm not perfect, right? Like that can be a really, really powerful inquiry to get down to the root of like what's driving it,
Mhm.
you know?
Being able to just sit with it there. And
Yeah.
like, whereas subconsciously, I'm for the most part just trying to avoid it, like just trying to
Mm.
not even realize that it's there, like give any energy to it, because in my subconscious programming, like that's not worth my energy. I don't have time to think about that. I have to go be productive and do all these things. Whereas when I do just sit with it without trying to judge it, and as you said, like get curious about it, I think that those are like really important words. Like just get curious about the feeling. It'll allow me to like build a relationship with that feeling, essentially. Like it's not a feeling that's just going to go
Yeah.
away. It's something that's always going to be there, so I might as well become friends with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think like for me, that's one of the reasons like psychedelics are so powerful for working with this kind of stuff, because it like cuts through all the layers of like conditioning and bullshit, and you can really get down to that core of like, oh, like, for me, I don't want to speak for you or anybody else, but like for me, like a lot of it comes down to like this very scared like child,
Hmm.
who's like world got shattered when his parents split up when he was like 4, and a lot of stuff like just sort of flows out of that of like, oh, well, if I don't act a certain way, then people are going to like abandon me, or I'm not going to be loved, and I have to do this in order to like get that love.
Maybe this is why we
um
became friends. My parents got to
you know
we
uh
our old subconscious programming just synced up and
yeah.
realized, like, okay, this guy's really similar. um
Mm.
because I do have like, I know I have a very similar program. My parents got divorced when I was 2.5, and yeah, I mean, there's this scared child that's in me that doesn't want to be abandoned and wants to do everything in order to like get that validation to be loved and like know that he's loved by everybody else, and all while doing it refuses to love himself.
Yeah, there's a big one. I'm gonna like maybe reframe it just a little bit and say like, okay, yeah, maybe there was some sort of like psychic simpatico, like, oh, we have this bond, and yet at the same time, like one of the things that I appreciate about our friendship is that um I think our kids play more than they like freak out or worry when
Yeah.
they're around each other. It's like
Oh, for sure.
we can get into that like playful space, and that the joy and just sort of the childlike, not childish, childlike.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
my word of the year for 2024 was there is play,
Mm.
because that's something that I really do want to make more of a priority, and like allow that inner child in me that just wants to have fun and play and not worry about all these things to have fun and play and not worry about all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. How's that been sort of manifesting or presenting since you've come back?
Again, it's like I'm very aware of the tension that's still there, like around that. And like, but I think I'm doing a good job of seeing it and being like, no, I'm going to do this anyways. And I feel like I'm conditioning myself to give less and less fucks, which is what I want to do, because I know I definitely grew up just caring about just anything and everything and thinking that every little tiny thing meant something that was big, and I had to put all this energy into this, and it's just exhausting. I can't live like that. And once I became more and more aware of that, I became more and more aware of how much energy I was using on a daily basis, caring about these things that do not deserve my energy. So yeah, I'm still working through, where do I give the fucks and where do I not give the fucks?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe just being like gentle with yourself, that like you've had your entire life to sort of build it up. So it's a process to sort of like deconstruct it and tear it down a bit.
Yeah. And I think it also too, what's frustrating is I'm not a very patient individual. At least I'm much more patient now than I used to be, but I was not a very patient individual growing up. It was instant gratification, is what I always wanted. And so that deconstructing process is not a quick process. And the reconstructing process is also not a quick process. So, I think it's one of those things that after my first experience with ayahuasca, like I became so hyper aware of these things and of the process, that I don't want to say it was easy for me, because it was not at all. But like, it was really, because it was the first time I really felt like this intense knowing that like, oh, yo, I need to knock this shit down. Like, this needs to go away. And I gave myself a lot of time and a lot of space to allow that to happen. And I was very patient. And then I've started to reconstruct. I think once I moved to Denver, that was really the beginning of that reconstruction period. And now I've been in Denver for a little over a year now. And sitting with ayahuasca again has kind of started the deconstruction period again. And so now it's like, fuck, I already did this. Like, do I really got to do this again?
Right. I think that, you know what, like, I think that's so relatable. Like there's absolutely no person that I know that's like legitimately doing work on themselves that at some point isn't like, fuck, does this not ever end? Like, can I just get a day off?
Yeah.
Like just one day,
please. And
yeah, super relatable.
That is the work. And I have to remind myself on a daily basis, like, I chose this, and I know I chose this, and I know why I chose this. And like, that's what helps a lot, to be honest, is knowing that it was not my subconscious programming that chose this. Like, it was me that was like, let's face it, regardless of what it looks like and regardless of what happens and what's going to happen. Like, I chose to face it, and like giving myself a fucking pat on the back for that, because I know a lot of people that don't. Not that that should matter when I think about it, but just given everything we see in the world nowadays, I'd be lying if I said it didn't help a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. What does it feel like? Like, do you notice anything when you say that?
Yeah, I noticed me immediately being like, "I like calm down. Like, don't like don't think you're better than other people because you're doing this." That's again like the ego wanting to just be like, look at me all high and mighty, which I know is also not the case. So I'm immediately met with that, chill.
Yeah. there's like that balance of like, we're on a podcast, so we should put our best foot forward, but at the same time, like, okay, don't get too carried away.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I was never good growing up at. I think this goes back to literally like the whole gratitude thing of just like allowing myself to just feel good about myself. Like it was always like, cool, you accomplished this, but what's next? Like there's other people doing this. What's next? What's next? What's next? And it's like this record repeating that again, like I know that record, all it leads to is just suffering and suffering and suffering because there is no destination. Like there is never going to be a place that part of me will ever be satisfied with. There will always be something more. And so like, you know, I need to sit with that part of me more and get more curious about it and like really see where it's coming from and like give it the love that you said.
Yeah, another thing that might be interesting, and again, like sort of to put the integration coach hat back on for a moment, like if this was that type of a relationship, I would be encouraging you to really slow down and notice when those moments are happening, like when you do feel good, and letting yourself really like slow down and experience it. And that's another place where that orienting comes in. So like when I first started doing SE work, I thought the orienting was just for like, oh my God, I'm getting overwhelmed with like trauma or like the negative. And it's like a way for me to like ground and reset. Right. And it is that, but I have found so much benefit from when I'm having a strong positive experience to also pause and slow down and really like receive it, really open myself up to just like, what does this feel like to just be with this feeling? Because just like you, I've spent most of my life like ignoring it or pushing it away or telling myself this message that like, that's not important. Like I got to get back to work or, you know, whatever it is. Like we're not really conditioned to just receive, you know? And so, yeah, like that might be something really interesting to explore in your own work is like when you do feel the heart welling up or, you know, that like that, those moments of beauty in the world. And man, you live in a beautiful place, you know, like I was just in Denver a couple of weeks ago. Like I went to the botanical gardens and was just like hanging out. It's just like a beautiful day. Like, this is so nice. There's not a cactus in sight, you know? But just, you know, like letting myself really like soak it in when it happens, when somebody says something nice to me, or, you know, when I see a hummingbird, or like when I eat a good meat, like when I'm eating something that's really good, like just slowing down and like letting, like noticing what does that feel like in my body and like letting myself really receive it.
I like that. I like that idea of doing the orienting in those moments, because I think sometimes in those moments I can recognize that like, oh shit, like this is a great moment. I should be really present for this right now. And then I get caught up in like the thinking of like, well, how do I be present? Like, what do I do to actually do that and be that and not be thinking about this voice in my head that's telling me to be present, that's ultimately making me not be present.
Yeah. Yeah. So just like let yourself slow down, like orient to the space. And then it's like when I come back to just full presence with that feeling, it's like, it's just there.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of like, I don't know if this happens to you, like I find myself, and especially like in the times post psychedelics, like just being willing to like be a little bit more open and vulnerable. Like, you know, I'm watching a movie that's really emotional and like, I'm just going to let myself like sort of cry and like get overwhelmed by the emotion. Right.
Yeah. I love doing that. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. Right. So like, I used to think oh, I'm just supposed to dive into that. Like I'm supposed to get overwhelmed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here to say that that's not right, or that what I'm saying is a better way. But I've found that by pausing and slowing down and orienting and really like slowing down so that I can receive and really feel and be present with what's happening, it makes it more rich, but in a way that's not overwhelming.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
it does. It reminds me of when my partner and I were just in Costa Rica the day after the last ceremony, which is our final day in Costa Rica. I remember, both of us just very open, had a wonderful experience, and like recognizing that. And also too, it's our last day in Costa Rica, this beautiful place. And like, we just wanted to savor it and take in as much as possible. So we went to the beach to go watch the sunset and, play in the water and just, again, like enjoy that and be present. And, there's a bunch of people too that are on the beach, but, we're still kind of in our own world. But, we were getting in the water and just standing there and like feeling the waves, and both of us just could not stop bursting into tears. Like it was fun. Like it was like very joyful tears of like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful moment. Like what a blessing it is that we get to do that, like get to do this and get to experience this life and like be here, look at that sunset. Like I can still picture that sunset just so unbelievably clearly in my mind right now. And, we would just be like, wow, that's amazing. And then we kind of go back to normal, and we'd start talking again, and then we just start bursting into tears again. And then it's like, oh my God, all these people around us must think we're psychotic right now.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe they're just so caught up in their own that story.
That's more likely that they didn't even notice it all.
Right. Yeah. Right. Isn't that an interesting thing, Yeah. Yeah, what a wonderful image. And that's something else where like in a different context off of a podcast, like we might really just dive into, because that sounds like something really nice to anchor and to like have as a resource, that moment, that memory. And yeah, are there any words that like kind of come up as far as like that experience itself?
Peace, oneness, whole,
yeah,
love. All really, really what we would consider good words.
Yeah.
Not scary words.
I'm really grateful that you gave yourself that space around the ceremony itself.
Yeah. I am too.
And how special to be able to share that with your partner.
Yeah. Getting teary, man.
Yeah. It's all good, brother. So here's $1 million question. If those tears could speak, what would they say?
Thank you.
Yeah. Just let yourself feel it. I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you being willing to go there.
Thank you for helping facilitate that.
Yeah. And I know how special it is to like be able to share that with a partner. It's like my partner introduced me to ayahuasca for the first time, even though we didn't journey together my first time. Um, but I've had the pleasure and the honor to return the favor, with MDMA, and maybe not taking them through their first mushroom experience, but like first mushroom experience with me, and like the way that I like to kind of to journey.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like just even hearing you and like watching you go through that recollection and that experience, it's bringing up some really cool stuff for me as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
No problem.
How's the drumming going?
It's it's going really good, honestly. It's something that I picked up when I got back after like being in the ceremony space, and again just wanting to figure out what are more ways that I can tap into that energy that was there. And also one of these narratives in my head of I'm not somebody who plays an instrument or is like very like or can create music. I'm somebody who loves to listen to music and enjoy it and consume it, but like, there's this narrative that like I'm not somebody who creates it. So it was kind of like, well, let's flip that switch and let's change that, because I like music is so special to me. And, I don't have to be fucking John Digweed up on the boards in order to be able to create music. It can be as simple as just hitting a drum and learning some rhythms. It's fun. I was actually just practicing a little bit before this podcast.
Nice. Yeah. I'm looking at your space there, and I can see your drum behind you there, which is pretty cool. Have you ventured out like any drum circles or
not yet?
Anything like
but
that yet?
I have an African beats drumming class that I signed up for on,
oh wow, that's
on
amazing.
Sunday.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I've just been watching YouTube videos and stuff to, get the basic beats down and things like that. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to like actually have somebody in person, kind of just lead me through something, even if I'm just playing a little beat while they're doing stuff, like, being a part of that. It just sounds like fun.
Yeah, and you never know like what will come out of that, like in terms of like community and meeting new people, or like having something that you can do with your like friends and kind of like bond and just like vibe out.
Yeah, it was funny. My friends and I, we all went camping a couple weekends ago, and I brought that with me. And one of our friends was like telling a campfire story, and they're like, "Oh, you should bang on the drum while I'm doing it, just to give me like a little beat in the background." And we kind of had this little like synchronistic thing going on where he'd be like telling the story, and then the dramatic parts he'd kind of look at me, and then I'd stop drumming, and then he'd say something, and then I'd start again a little bit. And it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
It was just silly.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my friend Adam, who's been on the podcast before, and I have a episode that I recorded with him and his sort of business partner, Mike. They have a group in Salt Lake City called the Energy Stack.
Mm-hmm.
And they like do drumming and like hand pans and breathwork and hape and like ice baths. And it's a really cool like community that's kind of built up around, those activities. And it's just super cool, like watching them and seeing the community, like seeing how people like come together around that. Cause it doesn't get much like older than that, right?
No.
Like people like gathered around the fire playing drums and other instruments, like some primal shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to tap into that energy more, just because like it's so pure. It's such a pure energy. Like as you said, it's very primal. And I think that this again could be a blanket statement, so I don't know about you, but like, you know, me, I think sometimes I try to deny those more animalistic parts of myself that, you know, really makes me human at the end of the day. But, you know, we've been so conditioned to think that we're above these things and that we're more advanced than that. And that's just bullshit.
Yeah. Or like getting like it's sort of being corrupted into like, well, where is this going? Like, what's the outcome?
Yeah, exactly.
Like there has to be a point instead of just playing for the sake of playing.
Yeah.
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 Totally.
As Alan Watts says quite a bit, you know, the point of dancing isn't to get to the end. The point of dancing is to dance. And the point of playing music isn't to get to the end of the song. Otherwise, the best song would just be one beat and then it'd be over. So the point is in the playing of the song. And like, that's what being present and being in the moment is. So I think it's just another avenue where to force myself to be present and be in the moment. Like when I'm playing and just listening to and hitting those beats, like my mind really can't be anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing because like even trying to put doing air quotes an integration session into a podcast, like we've taken something and sort of put like this packaging around it, right? But there's so many things in what we've turned into the integration process that have nothing to do with doing.
Yeah.
Like it's just about being, you know, like dancing, playing music, just these things where we can just do them for the sake of doing them without any outcome, without like worrying about judgment or like, am I good? Am I going to put this out on Spotify? Like, like, no, I'm just going to go and fucking play some notes and like let my heart lead, or just like let my heart express itself through my body, in this dance. There's so much power in like letting go of that whole doing and dropping into being.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you. I think this turned out better than I thought it was going to.
I think that I would agree with that, to be honest. I did have low expectations.
Totally.
Going into it, I was like, worst comes to worst, it just sucks, and that's totally fine.
Right. See, and that's what I'm talking about though, is like that's one of the things that I appreciate about you. It's like it feels easier to like take those risks or like do something like that's a little bit more outside of the box with you. And I appreciate that about our friendship. Yeah. And I also appreciate the fact that like I actually said this on there was some social media posts, like I've been on Threads lately. I don't know if you fuck with that at all. Okay. But so like there was like this, somebody was like, what's an unexpected like benefit or outcome that you've gotten from podcasting? And like literally the first thing that came to mind was like our friendship. I'm like the fact that like there's people that I've gone beyond like networking with and that I'm friends with in real life. That's freaking amazing.
That's awesome. That's crazy.
Right?
Like truly, truly crazy.
Yeah. Like, you're in Denver, so maybe like you run into more people, but like, just thinking back to the MAPS conference last year and like actually seeing all these people that where it's like, you've had, 1 to 2 hour conversation with them about some deep stuff, it's like, and yet, oh, I'm like actually seeing you in the flesh for the first time. Like, whoa, that's weird.
It is. It's weird. And it's also special. And it's also like, okay, like let's see if this is real. Like, was that actually, real that we tapped into for that 1 to 2 hours, or was it just, which is totally fine either way. Again, it's like just having no expectations, I think is a really beautiful thing, because it
Right.
it allows you to actually explore and see what is there. Like you can see the truth for what it is rather than trying to place these expectations on it and make it something that you want it to be for some reason rather than just seeing what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had this experience like ever since the pandemic started, and especially when it started, and like not knowing that it was going to turn into all the things that it did. But like, this, it's like you can choose to sit there and go, oh my God, we're like so disconnected from people, and like, we have to socially distance or blah, 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 whatever that means. Or you could go, fuck, like I have access to all these events that I didn't have before because we didn't have the need to put everything on Zoom because of social distancing and like the lack of travel and things like that. Wow, I have access to all these things now that I didn't before.
Yeah.
And from like a weird sort of energetic level, you could probably make an argument that we're more connected, like on a higher frequency than we were before, just because we're not like in the same physical space, right?
Yeah.
But it's all perspective, and it's all like, okay, like, like I find this in my work, it's like I do breath work, right, with people, and I do breath work online, and I do breath work in person, and I do work with people one-on-one, and I work with them in groups. And there's just as many people that are like, ew, I would never do breath work online because I want that in-person like experience, and I want to feel the energy of people like in the room, and I want a facilitator to be able to like put their hands on me.
Yeah.
There's just as many people that feel that way as there are people that are like, oh, I can be in the privacy of my own house and turn my camera off and turn my microphone off and like just let myself go without any judgment or like self-criticism of like, oh my God, am I being too loud, or am I making too much noise? Am I moving? Like I'm free to be whatever I want and whoever I want and like let whatever I want go. There's just as many people that like have that experience.
I just had this thought. This is just one of those intrusive thoughts. So how long until the Zoom ayahuasca ceremony?
I think there already are some. Like I don't know. Like I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like, I'm still not really sure how I feel about that.
Everybody get on your mats, get your purge buckets out.
Yeah. We're going to do Olympia through the screen. There's the new Zoom update has a Olympia emoji.
Everybody give a thumbs up if you
Everybody give a heart or a thumbs up. That's right. But yeah, it was funny. Like, I was on a Zoom the other day with a client, and they kept like making a certain like movement, and then there's like a thumbs up that kept happening. And after like the third time, we both kind of paused, and he was like, dude, why is that happening? And I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know. And then we started to try to like recreate it, and it wasn't happening.
I've ever tried to make it happen, it never has. And then it just randomly will happen. It's the weirdest thing.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I remember having a conversation with somebody about it, like towards the beginning of the pandemic, where they were talking about like sending medicine to people through like the mail, and then having like a ceremony via Zoom. And I was like, oh God, that sounds like an awful idea.
I still vote hard no on that.
Right. And then I do know that there are people that do like other medicines like ketamine or mushrooms,
ketamine,
where they're like,
sure.
like their facilitator is like sitting there with them on Zoom.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that seems like really irresponsible. And that's me talking as like somebody that does online breath work with somebody.
Which some could argue, like there are some experiences that happen during a breath work that can be dangerous to the person.
You're
that
absolutely
is involved.
right. There are limitations.
Yeah.
For me, a big part of that, well, there's a few different few different things. Number one, there's my job as the facilitator to, number one, like frame the experience, right? So like there's a huge difference in me like talking to you beforehand and saying, look, if something challenging comes up, it's a wonderful opportunity that your like inner intelligence is like actually feels safe enough to like let this come up. Yes, allow it to come up, right? So there's framing, there's screening. Like I don't just let any old person into my breath work. And there are people where I've said like, look, I don't think online is like a good choice for you right now. If you want to do an in-person session with me and we can kind of work it out and like see if later on. So screening and framing. But also like if we're coming from that perspective that there is this inner guiding intelligence or inner healer within us, and when we enter an expanded state through breath work or through plant medicine, the sort of the mundane ego mind gets pushed out of the way a little bit, and that inner healer kind of comes forth. It's almost like there's like an inner sort of break that the inner healer knows like, oh shit, I'm by myself. So I shouldn't open that box.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty of other boxes that I can open. There's plenty of other things that I can explore. And none of this is happening on like a conscious level.
Yeah.
But it's definitely happening on a subconscious level, I believe.
I definitely agree. And that's why like, I mean, I'll say to people, and like, I've never been in a mushroom ceremony before. My experience with interacting with mushrooms has been either like recreational, or I've done like large dose solo journeys. But I tell people, and then obviously my experience with ayahuasca, those have all been in ceremonial context, you know, with facilitators that know what they're doing and being led through. And obviously I've been able to go much, much deeper with the ayahuasca. And when people ask, they're like, oh, is it because ayahuasca? And I was like, you know, I can't fully answer that question, because I think it has more so to do with the fact that I'm being held in this container, that my subconscious will actually allow me to go to those deeper places. I think that if I were in that same container with mushrooms, I know for sure that I would be able to go deeper than I've ever been able to go on mushrooms. Do I know if it would be the same as ayahuasca? I have no idea, but I know that being held in that container has so much to do with it.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think for the audience, these are good questions to contemplate and ask yourself before you like sign up for a ceremony or before you decide to take a journey. Is like, you know, and these are, and even if you're working with a facilitator, like these are questions that you should be asking. Yeah. Like, hey, Mr. Facilitator, like, are you working with spirits and entities, or do you believe that like what's coming up in my experience is a part of my subconscious and like internal?
Yeah.
Right. Like those are two very, very opposite approaches when we're talking about psychedelics. And like, if you're coming from like, oh, everything is like in my mind, and you've got a facilitator that's like, oh, we got to get this entity out of you, you know, like maybe you're not going to have such a great time. You know, so like things that are good to sort of ask and to get curious about. And I would empower, you know, anybody listening to like empower you to ask those questions and like take your time finding somebody to work with, because those types of questions are going to affect the overall experience.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, this is a good one. I feel really good. I really appreciate, you know, you being open, being vulnerable. I hope I didn't push too much. Like I felt like there was a couple of times where I'm like, okay, I think we've had enough for like one day. Like we can like kind of go back into like a more traditional podcast mode. And, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. And thank you, Cam, for allowing me to be a part of your experience. Thank you, Cam, for just being open and vulnerable with the audience and like being willing to put your heart out there into the world like you did. And thank you for the work that you're doing, whether you think it's work or not. Even having those experiences is creating changes within yourself and within your community, your family, and ultimately within the entire world. So I just appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. And I am going to sit with that gratitude and allow myself to receive it rather than thinking I need to move on to the next thing.
There you go. That sounds like the vital point for this episode. And if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, that sounds really interesting, and you'd like to experience it yourself, please feel free to reach out to me and we could talk about that sort of support. Also, just, I noticed that Cam naturally dropped into his breath, and really like the breath was a resource for him throughout that process. So if that's something that you'd like some more assistance with, that's really where a lot of my my work is done. It's sort of in this intersection of psychedelic integration and breath work. So would love to chat with you if you feel like that's something that you're being called towards or something you could use some more help with. And I feel good. I'm glad I took the chance.
I feel good too. I'm very, very glad you did this. I was a little skeptical where it was going to go. And right. I think, again, I think things actually did come up for me that I needed to shed light on, that I had not been super consciously aware of, and, just more for me to sit with, more for me to feel. And I'm glad that I get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I don't know about you. I know like I see someone once a week, and oftentimes like it's like sometimes it's during the session that like a lot of the big stuff is happening, but usually it's like the next day or like later on that evening, or like, kind of in the aftermath of it, where like I'm able to go a little bit deeper, or like, kind of meditate on something that came up in the moment and it's still unfolding. So I hope that, what we did here was helpful towards that, and that you can, kind of continue to explore and integrate it into your integration, for lack of a better description.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we go, anything you want to like shout out? I know people should go check out the Trip Sitting podcast, but what else is going on?
Yeah, check out the Trip Sitting podcast if you're interested in going on an ayahuasca retreat or a mushroom retreat. I have a little business called consciousretreats.net, where you can book a discovery call with me, and I've got a network of retreat centers that I know and that I trust, and that will do good work. So only if you know you're interested in having that experience and want to know where to look, because I am not here to convince anybody that they should be having these experiences or that this is the right thing for them, because that is always a very personal and internal decision. And if you are ever in a position where somebody's trying to sell you on using plant medicine, you should probably turn the other way.
Probably. Well, I know this isn't the last time that you're going to hear Cam on the Vital Points, and I appreciate you, brother. Can't wait for the next time.
Much love.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. It was just a beautiful thing to like even go back and listen to it, and especially because so much time had passed. I'm really pleased with the way that it turned out, and I hope that you are too. If you haven't already, I would be really, really grateful if you could take a moment and leave a review or a rating, depending on what podcast platform you're listening to this on. It's a simple, cost-free way to show support and help more like-minded people discover the show. And hey, share it with a friend. I'm sure that there's somebody that you know that could benefit from this podcast, whether it's sharing a meditation with them or an episode like this, or, maybe something on psychedelic integration. There's something for everyone, and I would be really grateful if you could support in that way. Also, make sure that you're signed up for the Blue Magic Alchemy email list at bluemagicalchemy.com. You'll get updates, exclusive content, and insights delivered straight to your inbox. It's a fantastic way to stay connected, and you get a free guide to using breathwork for integration as a way to say thanks for signing up. And of course, check us out on school.com/Blue Magic Alchemy. It's pretty much the bomb. I'm really happy with the way it's turning out so far. I'm really excited to continue to develop it. And I think that people are really digging in and having a good time there. So hope to see you on the Blue Magic Alchemy Collective on School. Remember, it's not about the method you choose or the pace at which you travel. The vital point is to consistently show up for yourself and practice. As the saying goes, it's not the destination, but the journey that truly matters. And I'd be honored to accompany you on yours. So please don't hesitate to reach out, connect, share your journey, the successes and challenges alike, from just an email, DM, or review away. So let's journey, grow, and transform together. Thanks again for tuning in. Until the next episode, keep exploring, keep growing, and above all, keep practicing, because that's the vital point.